Hello and welcome. You don't need me to tell you that the circumference of the Earth is long. So long that if Orville Wright on his first flight was able to circumnavigate it, this would have taken him 167 days of continuous flight to arrive back where he started. Since the dawn of aviation, men and women have set out on longer and longer flights, crossing oceans and continents, setting new records. The dream of flying non-stop around the Earth was thought impossible. Impossible, that is, until Jeana Yeager, Dick Rutan and Bert Rutan were having lunch together in 1981 and began to sketch ideas on a napkin to do just that. Bert Rutan was no stranger to designing and building unusual aircraft. Of 367 of his individual concepts, 45 have flown, including the Very Vegan, Very Ease, Long Ease, Quickie, Solitaire, Aries, Boomerang, Global Flyer and Strato Launch. The problems to be overcome on circumnavigation were enormous. 2 pilots at a minimum, plus their food and water, enough fuel, and an airframe capable of handling turbulence from storms, yet being light. A support crew on the ground will be needed to guide them to find favourable winds and to solve problems. Co-pilot Dick Rutan was later to say, "I got to really hate this airplane. I felt not only was it not going to work, but I would probably die in it." Yes, it had terrible flying qualities. Bert Rutan knew that it must have major compromises to make this work. Voyager was built in Mojave, California, over a period of 5 years, mainly by volunteers. The airframe was made from fiberglass, carbon fibre and Kevlar. It weighed 426 kilos when empty and 1,020 kilos when the front and rear engines were included. Fully loaded, it weighed 4,397 kilos. The maiden flight was on June 22, 1984, both front and rear engines operating. After takeoff, the front engine was then stopped and the propeller feathered. On a shakedown flight on July 15, 1986, Dick Rutan and Yeager completed a test flight off the coast of California in which they flew for 111 hours and 44 minutes, travelling 19,082 kilometres in 20 circuits. Voyager's world flight takeoff took place on the longest runway at Edwards Air Force Base at 8:01 a.m. local time on December 14, 1986. 3,500 of the world's press were in attendance. The calculated endurance of the aircraft was 216 hours or 9 days. As the plane accelerated, the tips of the wings, which were heavily loaded with fuel, were damaged as they unexpectedly drooped and scraped against the runway, ultimately causing the winglets to break off at both ends. The aircraft accelerated very slowly and needed approximately 14,200 feet of runway to gain enough speed to lift from the ground, the wings arching up dramatically at takeoff. The 2 damaged winglets remained attached to the wings only by a thin layer of carbon fibre until removed by flying the Voyager in a slip. During the flight, the 2 pilots had to deal with extremely cramped quarters. To reduce stress, the 2 originally intended to fly the plane in 3-hour shifts, but flight handling characteristics while the plane was heavy prevented routine changeovers and they became very fatigued. Dick Rutan reportedly stayed at the controls without relief for almost the first 3 days of the flight. The plane also continuously reminded the pilots of its pitch instability and fragility. They had to manoeuvre around bad weather numerous times, most perilously around Typhoon Marge. Libya denied access to the country's airspace. There were contentious radio conversations between the Rutan brothers as Dick flew around weather and at one time turned around and began doubling back. The plane landed at 8:06 a.m. in front of 55,000 spectators at the same airfield 9 days after takeoff. Rutan made 3 low passes over the landing field before putting Voyager down. The average speed for the flight was 187 kilometres per hour. There was 48 kilos of fuel remaining in the tanks, about 1.5% of the fuel they had at takeoff, enough for only another 2 hours of flight. Sanctioned by FAI and AOPA, the flight was the first successful aerial, non-stop, non-refueled circumnavigation of the Earth that included 2 passes over the equator as opposed to shorter circumnavigations circling the North and South Poles.
Africa was an absolute bitch.
What did you think?
Every night, you go along in the afternoon and everything would be pretty good, and I'd go back and get a little bit to eat, and every bloody night it was just the most horrible experience. It was just like
Pumpy?
We ran right into a thunderstorm. I sat there. At the last minute, I saw these clouds coming. Whew. And then I'd sit there and I watched all the 3 attitude indicators, and the airplane just rolled right vertical like that.
That was Atlantic.
Yeah, it was just vertical, and then we popped out of it.
This feat has been accomplished only one other time by the late Steve Fossett in the Global Flyer, also designed by Burt Rutan. For the feat, Yeager, the Rutans, and crew chief builder Bruce Evans received the 1986 Collier Trophy. Later, Dick Rutan said that the flight was arguably the worst date in history, as he and then girlfriend Jeana Yeager shared the bathtub-sized cockpit for a week and a half. Rutan even bought a small plastic bag with an adhesive circular opening to answer the question he said is most often asked. How do you go to the bathroom? No pain, no gain, they say, eh? Thank you for watching and stay safe.